Okay.
No matter if it's a parent, a sibling, or a friend, talking about loss with kids can be a tricky subject.
Joining us now is author of Are You With Me?, 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋. And Corey, I want to start with your story. What happened in your personal life?
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. He was 39. It completely took us all by shock. We have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6.
And it's only been a year. How did you go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others?
You know, I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, you know, dealing with anything. But I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night.
I was reading it, and I remember I just was in tears, and I thought, like, this is perfect for your family. It just seemed perfect. And so I was just baffled at how she even had the time to do that.
And it's, you know, explaining to my kids just because he's not present here with us, that doesn't mean his presence isn't here with us, and he's doing these things with us.
Viewers at home, what they saw in that interview was this bereaved young woman who tragically lost her husband.
Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
But this would be just the beginning of the story, and boy, was there a lot more coming their way.
And we're clear. All right, good job, everyone. Let's get ready for headlines.
911, what's the address of the emergency? My husband's not breathing. He's cold. Okay, tell me exactly what happened. I don't know. I just came in. I was sleeping with my kids. Okay, I can't understand you. I need you to take a deep breath. What's going on?
It's a little after 3 in the morning, and 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 calls 911 saying her husband Eric is not breathing and is cold to the touch.
Okay, can you do CPR? No, I don't know how. You don't know? I'm gonna tell you how to. Are you willing to do CPR? Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count out loud so I can hear you. I'm counting with you. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Officers are dispatched to the scene. Paramedics and firefighters are already there when they arrive.
In those first few moments of the police body-worn camera, you are watching this life or death moment unfold. Law enforcement is trying to make sense of it all. Inside the bedroom, you can see law enforcement trying to help 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋. He is on his back on the ground. He has no pulse. He's not breathing. And they're using a CPR machine, so you can hear this sort of rhythmic sound.
Okay. What's your first name? Yeah, let me talk to you out here for a second. Let them do their work in there. So what happened today?
He was just fine. We were fine.
When you say we were fine, what time did you see him when he was alert?
We had a drink together at 9 to celebrate something at work.
Hours earlier, they were celebrating a big financial win for her real estate business.
She mentions they've had a cocktail before bed. She mentions that her son has night terrors and that she'd been asleep with him.
When I sleep with my kids, I'll wake up and I go back in my own bed.
Mm-hmm. Where are your children now?
One's asleep in that room, 2 are awake with their ear to the door. I don't want them to go out. Please don't let them come out.
Okay.
At one point, the officer asks if she would like to call anybody, and she mentions she wants to call her mom.
Here, you can use my phone.
I got a call. It was Corey. Said, "Mom, you need to come up here."
Something's wrong with Eric. The police have girls are here. I don't know what's happening.
I said, "Something's happened." She said, "Eric."
Does he have any medical conditions or anything like that?
He has Lyme's disease.
Lyme's disease?
But nothing major.
So they're asking questions like, does he have any, health ailments?
So no heart problems or anything like that?
So while she's talking to the officers, she says that sometimes he takes a gummy to sleep, but she also tells them she's not sure whether he took one that night.
It's like a gummy, as in like a THC gummy? Okay. Does he have any history of illicit drug use or anything in the past year? No, never.
As I pull in the driveway, 3 cops come running at me, asking who I am. I went running through the house to get to Corey, and it was just devastating. She was in total shock. I had no idea, not only as a mother, what to do for her, but as a person, how to help a person in shock.
Oh my God.
I went and talked to the boys, and they're just confused. They're not crying because they don't know what's going on. They just know a lot of cops are there.
Corey Richens' mother, Lisa Darden, says that he got weekly allergy shots, and maybe that has something to do with his medical condition.
You didn't look good last night.
He looked pale last night, and I asked if you were okay, and he said yeah, but he was saying his chest was hurting.
I had seen him that day, and I said, oh my God, what is wrong with you? You look horrible.
For a moment, the deputy walks away from Corey Richens, and you can see a conversation between him, another officer, and an EMT.
I don't know if he had an aneurysm or something with all the blood. There's a lot of blood for some unknown reason. A little bit coming out as soon as we start doing compressions when the blood came out. So,
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
The amount of blood was sort of surprising to the paramedic, and this leads to the initial hypothesis of an aneurysm.
My husband's active. He didn't just die in his sleep. This is insane.
Eric was very athletic. You would never expect an aneurysm, but that's what they're telling us. They don't know, they're saying an aneurysm, and you just can't believe he's gone.
In the body cam footage, you actually hear Eric's sister, Katie, before you see her.
We don't know, we went to bed.
She's moaning and she's screaming out, and it's the raw guttural pain that you hear when you've just learned that someone you love has died.
In the video, you see Katie take Corey and Eric's young boys upstairs and away from the turmoil.
But at one point, Katie even can hardly breathe.
Natural, okay? Just take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
Okay, I gotta breathe. Oh my God, I gotta breathe. I just talked to him like a couple hours ago.
At 3:58 a.m., Eric Richens is officially declared dead, but it's also noted that he appears to have been dead for quite some time before they arrived at the residence.
Then next thing is our detective and our medical examiners are going to respond to the location. They're going to do their investigation and document everything. And then most likely, because of his age, his health and everything else, most likely.
The county coroner's office has an obligation, a legal requirement really, to investigate forensically any unexpected death. Whenever you have a young man like this who dies mysteriously, you can bet they're going to do an autopsy.
This is the night of a tragic end, but the beginning of a mystery that will take years to unravel.
The night that Eric died, Corey says that they were celebrating. They were celebrating what was going to be her most ambitious purchase yet for her real estate business. A distressed mansion in Midway, Utah that she hoped to buy for millions, flip it, and sell it for millions more.
She was so excited about it and the possibilities for it.
This was a very big moment for Corey Richens. Corey grew up working for her aunt's cleaning company, cleaning the toilets of the rich people who lived in mansions in Park City. Corey would dream that one day she would be the one that owned the mansions and not the one cleaning the toilets. This was Corey's moment to say, look, I did it. I made something of myself, and now I'm on the other side. Corey grew up in a family that moved a lot.
My parents worked construction, so we would move every 2-3 months growing up. We weren't poor by any stretch, but we weren't wealthy by any stretch either. My parents did what they had to do to get by.
When she got to junior high, her family really made a home in Heber City, Utah. It's also part of Summit County. It's a beautiful mountain town. And there she finds a really close group of girlfriends.
We just had a really good core group of friends. And I mean, the text we'd get every weekend was, hey, where's the party at? And then we also played sports. And then we were in the same classes together. And we just kind of evolved from there.
She's on the cheer team. In high school, she's playing tennis. And she seems to have really found a home and belonging.
She was a tough cookie. Anybody said anything wrong about us, you could, kind of always count on Corey to handle it.
Corey and Eric met when Corey was working at a Home Depot.
Home Depot paid the best. It was brand new, it was in Park City, and it paid really well for cashiers.
He was coming into the Home Depot a lot because of his stonemasonry business, and they hit it off and started talking, and people remember, sparks flying and instant chemistry.
He was significantly older than her.
She just thought the world of Eric. Eric was it.
Eric grew up in Bountiful, Utah. Went to high school at Woods Cross. The Richens owned a cattle ranch in Summit County. And he grew up working on this ranch. His sisters rode horses, they had animals, they were outdoorsmen.
Eric was one of 3 children with 2 sisters, Amy and Katie, and he was very close to his mother who had died in 2018.
Eric grew up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church. His dad shares that it was one of the most important things that they wanted to instill in their children was faith and religion. So much so that Eric went on a 2-year mission for the church to Mexico City, and then came back and started his stonemasonry business.
Eric was a very dynamic individual.
He worked hard, but he also played hard. He had ATVs, he camped, he explored.
Eric was a big-time hunter, go to Africa, big trophy hunting stuff.
They began dating. Corey became pregnant with their first child, and they married soon after.
The marriage is a backyard ceremony. Family and friends gather. Corey is about to walk down the aisle, and Eric's mother present her with a prenup. And the prenup says that his stonemasonry business belongs to him, and that the only way that she would benefit from that business would be if he were to die while they are married.
Corey was pretty distraught over it, but ultimately she signed it. She loved Eric, she wanted to marry Eric, so she went along to get along, I guess.
I don't think it's a secret that Eric's family, or at least parts of Eric's family, didn't approve of Corey.
It was a rough start at the beginning, and once that got passed, I mean, they had a good wedding.
Corey and Eric ended up having 3 boys in 4 years.
She planned that. She was a planner, and that was her plan. Corey was everything you'd probably want as a mom.
She loved her boys. Her boys are her world. And when she wasn't working, she was with her kids.
From Boy Scout leader to soccer to you name it, she's involved in everything.
Eric really, he was a dedicated dad.
He was a soccer coach for the boys.
My last memory of Eric was me in their living room playing soccer with his son, you know, and Eric was sitting in his chair, like sitting back like this, giggling, while his son kicked my ass in soccer, you know, and he was really proud of it.
Eric's business has become incredibly successful. It's $1 million business, C&E Masonry.
And they have a very affluent life. They're taking trips together.
My first cruise was with them. They would go out to fancier restaurants. Yeah, they had money to spend.
At the beginning of all, Corey stayed home with the children, but at some point, Corey wanted more, and she started a real estate business.
In 2019, Corey starts 𝐄𝐏𝐿𝐼CH's Realty, which is her home flipping business. That first year, Corey buys and resells a property to a family that says they found their dream home.
Guess who's homeowners? Me, and him, and me, and him, and me. We just bought a house!
Just 2 years later, Corey is managing 15 renovation projects.
Corey's making a very good living.
It's expanding quickly. She's buying a lot of properties, and by all accounts, it is very successful. This looks like the all-American perfect family. A beautiful home, a beautiful family, beautiful children, and 2 thriving businesses.
What's your first name? Yeah, let me talk to you.
Nobody ever thought Eric was gonna die.
Of course, 𝐅𝐔 𝐋𝐋, a dedicated father, has provided for his children. But this grieving widow is about to discover her future won't be quite what she thought.
Eric's sister, Amy, says this home isn't yours.
They're screaming back and forth. I stepped in between the two of them.
I learned the news about Eric passing on March 4th through a phone call. Why? What happened? What could have caused it? It was just surreal.
And just the day before, Corey says that she and Eric were toasting the purchase of her dream property, a $2.9 million mansion. And just hours later, Eric would be dead.
Eric was beloved in the community, and many people come and gather at the family home to sort of celebrate his life.
There were just constant people coming in and out of the house, paying their condolences. We were just, you know, reminiscing about Eric.
We were all just there to support Corey, keep the boys occupied, keep their minds sort of off of, you know, what happened.
We were literally talking about Eric the entire night and reason, dancing and listening to his favorite songs. One of our friends is shotgunning a beer.
Richard, yep.
And it's not the way everybody else may celebrate, but that's how we did it, because that's what Eric would have done with us.
At one point, you know, they're playing music, and Cody Johnson's Till You Can't comes on, and this is Eric's favorite song.
I mean, it's an incredible song with a very obvious meaning. Live until you can't, you know, and to know that we just lost somebody so suddenly, it put things in perspective.
Yeah, if you got a chance, take it.
Corey's dancing with her 3 sons, and Eric's sister Amy films the dance.
And there was this light that kind of projected around them, and she's like, I swear Eric's dancing with them right now. Like, it was special.
And it's this real moment of sort of solidarity between the 2 families.
But that solidarity appears to be short-lived.
The morning after that gathering, there is a dispute, an argument between Corey and Eric's sister, Amy. Corey realizes that Eric's will is in a safe.
She seemed a little adamant about getting the will, and she was pretty positive that it was in the safe, but she didn't know what the combination was.
𝐅𝐔 𝐋𝐋's sister Amy is at the house, and a locksmith shows up to access the safe.
You just hear like this blood-curdling scream as I ran out into the garage. and Amy had seen a sign on a truck that said locksmith or something. She flipped out and told Corey, you know, you're not supposed to be getting into the safe.
And then Amy drops a bomb. She tells Corey that Eric had secretly set up his trust and will, and Corey was largely cut out.
They're screaming back and forth. I stepped in between the two of them. Eventually, the police showed up.
In the midst of all of this, Corey wants to fact check what's going on, and they call the estate planner. So the estate planner ends up confirming to Corey that right around 2020, Eric had created an estate and that his sister, Katie, was in charge of that and the executor.
He makes his sons the beneficiary of the trust. He puts the house in the trust.
And that's when those words of, it's not your home, came out. And Corey's like, it is my house. I've lived here for 10 years. You know, what are you talking about?
Amy told authorities that Corey punched her in the face and the neck. Corey is then arrested and charged with assault.
She ends up pleading no contest, but she is found guilty of assault.
To think this is happening 2 days after Eric's death, and then these two families have to see each other again at Eric's funeral?
The funeral itself, I think, went off very well, but you could already see the animosity between the two families. It's contentious.
Oh, the funeral was incredibly uncomfortable. Corey stood in one, and then his family stood in like another area. Yeah, it was a very obvious divide immediately, and they wouldn't talk to each other.
There really wasn't much reference to Corey. There wasn't a lot of love going on.
It was over-the-top, lavish casket. It was like a horse and buggy. It was grand. It was very country. It was just the most uncomfortable funeral I've ever been at. His 40th birthday was just a couple weeks after the funeral. Like, his clothes had already been taken down, and she wasn't wearing her wedding ring, and I thought that was a little odd. I mean, it wasn't even a month.
As the months passed, Corey filed a civil lawsuit against Eric's sister, Katie, disputing the trust.
And Corey seems to continue to adjust to life as a single mother and a businesswoman.
Corey talks a lot about how important routine is to getting through the process of grief. And so, you know, usually at nighttime, this is when you read to your children. And she was saying that they looked for something to read that would answer some of these questions, and she found nothing.
She said, I have looked everywhere, and I can't find a book on grieving for children. She said, I wonder if I could write one.
Corey Richens self-published a book called Are You With Me?
The first part of the book is actually written from the child's perspective, the little boy who's wondering if his dad is with him.
Corey actually used a ghostwriter in order to create this book.
Are you at my soccer game when I scored that goal for you? I looked for you in the crowd, but you weren't there. Did you see it?
And then later on in the book, it switches to the deceased father's perspective, and he sort of starts saying, yes, I am with you.
I am with you when you scored that goal for me. You couldn't hear me cheer for you, but I yelled and clapped as loud as I could, just like always.
Corey dedicates the book to my amazing husband and a wonderful father. And then there is a drawing of the family of 5. You see Corey and Eric together with their 3 children and the dog.
I will forever love you, my sweet baby, until we see each other again. Yes, I am with you.
In March 2023, Corey Richens goes on these local radio and TV stations talking about the book.
Starts with 2.
And good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
We got an email, wrote into the station. It was Corey saying that she had just written what she believed to be was the first book for kids about coping with grief, and that she would love the chance to share that on Good Things Utah.
My kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year.
And to make sense and process, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly.
What a shock this must be for this poor woman. My heart went out to her.
I'm new to all of this, so kind of doing all, research and reading books and things to try and understand, not only how to grieve as a widow, as a wife, but also, you know, with my kids, how to help them understand what just happened.
But the big shock happened a couple of days later when we get an anonymous email. And there's just one line, and it's in all capital letters with many exclamation marks at the end, and it says, "You know she killed her husband."
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. While Corey has moved on with her life and is promoting her children's book about coping with grief, authorities have been digging into the circumstances surrounding Eric's death.
Were you first on scene?
We were second.
And there was blood before they get...
A little bit coming out as soon as we start doing compressions.
Originally, it was one of the EMTs on scene who suggests that maybe Eric had an aneurysm.
I don't know if he had an aneurysm or something with all the blood.
And I think that made a lot of sense to the family on scene right then, because what else would it be that would make a healthy 39-year-old man all of a sudden stop breathing in the middle of the night?
So law enforcement says that there will be an autopsy. They think it might have been an aneurysm, but they don't know.
For the people that knew Eric, the autopsy was absolutely shocking.
The initial autopsy report comes back, and it's drug intoxication, fentanyl, as the cause of death.
5 times the amount of fentanyl that could kill anyone.
Eric did not do drugs, not to my understanding, you know, and Corey was saying the same thing, so it was just baffling.
They also found that it was not medical grade fentanyl. So this is nothing that was prescribed by a doctor.
This would have been, you know, drugs off the street, the type of drugs that you would procure on a corner and don't necessarily know the origins of.
The autopsy report jumpstarts a criminal investigation because this is not a natural death. This is either an accidental overdose or someone killed Eric.
Now police officers realize they have to find the origin of the drug.
Police get a search warrant to search the Richens' home for illegal drugs.
Investigators go in, they seize Corey's electronics, Eric's electronics, and they search the house for anything that could possibly have traces of fentanyl.
But they don't find any fentanyl.
During this search, Corey is stopped by then lead detective Jamie Woody, and at that moment, Corey says what everybody else is saying, that Eric doesn't do drugs, that she's shocked by the cause of death.
Corey Richens talks to the chief medical examiner and essentially has a bunch of questions, and she goes down a list of the various items that were found in the stomach contents.
The third one, the acetyl, I don't know how you say that.
Acetylfentanyl.
Oh.
Yeah, that's just a variant of fentanyl that is usually only present in the setting of illicitly manufactured fentanyl.
Illicit manufactured, like a pharmacy?
No, like fentanyl that's manufactured by drug cartels as opposed to by pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, good Lord.
It's pretty clear she's kind of reading from the report and asking individual questions about each part.
I was just trying to figure out, you know, if we found out anything new.
Definitely, you know, death from fentanyl intoxication, and we still don't know how he got it into him.
Yeah, and I mean, is that anything you could ever find out?
When the toxicology report comes back, Eric's family comes forward to law enforcement and says, well, we have some concerns about the toxicology report. Eric didn't do drugs.
The Richens family was immediately suspicious that Corey had a role in Eric's death.
According to Eric's family, while it seemed like Corey and Eric were flying high, when he died, it was a very different reality.
Eric discovered actually in 2020 that Corey had taken out a loan to help her business and did so without telling him.
Corey had taken out a $250,000 line of credit against the home, which Eric solely owned and had no idea about.
That made them all start to be very concerned with Corey's financial situation, and that is actually what caused him to change the trust, because he wanted to make sure his children were taken care of.
The family says that when Eric finds out, he visits a divorce attorney. I think it's like, how can you deceive your spouse like that? When you own a home, the idea that you're going to take out a line of credit, that they're never gonna realize this, and you're somehow gonna go out and spend $250,000 and they're just never gonna get that that's what was going on behind the scenes, it's pretty shocking.
They end up going to counseling and they do not separate. But there is this idea, she's lied about their finances. Even if there's the facade of things being good within the marriage, there's still a real permanent rift between the couple, and the trust has been broken there.
But as it turns out, allegations of financial crimes are not the only evidence investigators are uncovering.
A year after Eric's death, Corey's finances are not looking good at all. She thought she was going to be getting an inheritance, and now the weight of her debt is bearing down on her.
She's in a lot of trouble here. She owes a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars.
It was hard for her that year, financially and emotionally. Her kids, were crying at night because their dad is gone. And she has Eric's family who are blaming her for his death.
Emotionally, she kind of seemed like she's hanging on by a thread. Corey was also trying to run this business that she was doing, and she just seemed really stressed out.
One of Corey's biggest financial burdens was this mansion she had purchased.
A luxurious piece of property on the most beautiful land.
She buys it for close to $3 million. But at this point, the mansion is far from finished.
Corey Richens commissioned this YouTube video of the house construction. It even included a virtual view of the planned luxe amenities.
Corey had talked about turning the Midway Mansion into an event space where people could have weddings. It needed a lot of work, estimated to be a couple million.
Corey is allegedly making all of this work through hard money loans. And these are loans that are short term, they cost more, they tend to be riskier.
But Corey didn't have money from Eric's estate to help, and eventually lost the mansion to foreclosure.
The fallout from Corey's financial strain allegedly ends up harming one of her best friends, a woman named Chelsea Barney.
Corey's been helping her best friend buy a home, her first home. So she says, look, I'll get the loan, you'll sign the deed, the home will be yours, and you can pay the mortgage each month. She was a waitress and a manager at a restaurant, and she had saved all of her tip money for years.
She gave Corey $45,000 as a down payment.
She was always on time with her payment. And so when all of a sudden she was getting notices that her home might be in trouble, she called and asked for a copy of the deed.
Essentially, Chelsea had found out that the deed was never properly filed with the county.
She never was the owner of the home.
The house is foreclosed on, Chelsea and her family are evicted, and to add insult to injury, all this money she saved up to buy this home, it's gone.
And there's another family who also say their dealings with Corey did not end well.
We just bought a house!
Taryn and Alec Wright buy this home for their family. It's been remodeled, there's a view of the mountains, it has a great yard.
But once they were in that home, they discovered a major problem.
They claim they find mold in the walls, and they say there was water coming in and that everyone in the family got sick. Nosebleeds, asthma, really unpleasant stuff.
Corey denied that she had any knowledge of any problems with the home, and that the home had been inspected prior to their closing on it.
The Wrights filed a lawsuit and told 2020 they lost their house to foreclosure, saying they'd been financially ruined by the cost of a long-term temporary rental while still paying for that home.
Meanwhile, there are people who are starting to say out loud what only a few knew, that Eric had gotten ill in the past, and he suspected Corey was behind it.
Eric and Corey were on a trip to Greece in 2019.
They were out having dinner one night, and everyone was ordering drinks. Eric had just recently got Lyme's disease from a hunting trip. He's taking medication for it. On that medication, you're not allowed to have alcohol. It would make you very, very sick. Eric ordered a virgin drink. When they brought it over, he tasted it and said that he thought that there was alcohol in it. He started not feeling well, and they ran up to the hotel room.
He called his sister Katie and told her that he thought that Corey had tried to poison him.
I don't believe Eric said that. I don't believe he ever said that. They were in a restaurant when he got sick, so the only one serving him was a waitress.
Then actually on Valentine's Day of 2022, so only weeks before his death, Corey had ordered a sandwich from a local diner.
The server answered the phone and a to-go order was placed, a Bald Mountain Bagel sandwich, which is just a toasted bagel with bacon, egg, and cheese, avocado, and sliced tomato. And 12 minutes later, Corey came in and picked it up and paid for it.
When she left the sandwich for him, she left a note, basically just saying, "Happy Valentine's Day, I love you."
After just a single bite, Eric seemed to believe he was having an allergic reaction. He used his son's EpiPen, took some Benadryl, and went to sleep. And when he woke up, he texted friends, "You almost lost me this time. I think she might have poisoned me."
And police are about to learn just where that poison could be coming from.
Speed.
Corey came to me about a year after she said her husband had died. All she had said was that he passed away and she was ready for some new family photos. So she wanted to get her hair done to look cute in the pictures with her sons. I was really impressed with how she was handling that situation with her little boys and how much she was doing with her life. Corey spent 5 or 6 hours in my chair. We did a full color on her and then we did her extension install after that. I think she ended up spending around $2,900.
It's been a year since Eric Richens' death, and Corey is moving on with life. But Eric's family, however, is frustrated. They say they're not seeing progress in the investigation, and they're dealing with the back and forth lawsuits over the estate. So they decide to hire a private investigator.
This PI pulls phone records, looks at thousands of text messages, pulls electronics, gets cell phone data.
So when the private investigator gets into these phone records, he discovers that there are essentially 3 people that Corey is communicating with all the time. One is Eric, the other is her mother, and the third person is a woman named Carmen Lauber.
This is between the months right before and right after Eric Richens dies. So why is Corey talking to Carmen Lauber so much?
Carmen worked for my sister cleaning houses and cleaning the fix and flips. And Corey would call her and say, "Hey, I need you to go to this address, clean this house."
This woman has a checkered past, including a whole bunch of drug stuff.
With the information that the private investigators gathered, he's forwarding all of that to the Summit County Sheriff's Office.
A new lead detective is put on the case, Detective Jeff O'Driscoll, and his theory is to start over, start fresh.
Carmen is in a court-ordered drug program, and Detective O'Driscoll takes the opportunity to search her trash. He finds drug paraphernalia, and that's a violation. Now he's got probable cause to search her home. Not only do they find enough evidence to bring drug charges, they find a gun, and she's not allowed to have one since she's a convicted felon. And they notice something that stops them in their tracks. They're looking at a wall full of inspirational sayings that she's posted, and they see, taped to a mirror, a copy of Eric's obituary.
At this point, they've really zeroed in on Corey as being, the prime suspect to Eric's passing, and they need somebody to kind of connect those dots. Without Carmen, police really didn't have much of a case.
So can Carmen tell them if Corey had any connection to the fentanyl?
Write down something as far as you remember it right now, and then we can work on the details as we continue to talk about it, as we check phone records, as we, do all our part, our side to corroborate what you're saying, right?
Hey, now, everything I just told you, I probably remember what order I told you in.
It's okay, and that's fine, because you know what? We want to make sure we get the right story. And so the way you're remembering it is, is all you can give us. You can't make something up that you don't remember, right?
Right.
She tells police that not only has Corey asked her to get fentanyl, but she did so on 2 separate occasions, and she even said things like, the first batch wasn't strong enough.
The thought was insinuated that she wanted you to get something that somebody could die from.
I know one thing, that when we got one, it wasn't dark enough. I don't even know how fentanyl really goes.
Carmen explained she got 1 set of drugs sometime in February, and then was asked to get stronger stuff, and then got another dose of drugs a second time around.
So Carmen's facing prosecution and years of prison time.
The only exception to that, and the only thing that they're willing to kind of help you out with, is if you can help us out with this.
And by so, he means like, give us the details that will ensure Corey gets convicted of murder.
Oh my God.
This is a serious case, Carmen. I'm not
that
trying
is way more of my...
I know.
You got Carmen, who's looking at 25 years to life for drug charges and gun charges. She's going to tell the cops whatever they want to hear. And they're making a plea deal.
The goal is to convict Corey for an aggravated murder. These parallel drug investigations, those aren't a priority.
Carmen says her dealer was Robert Crozier. He's already in custody for other drug crimes, and he's also detoxing. He says that he and Carmen would meet at a gas station where he would sell her the drugs. Carmen says she would hide the drugs at one of the houses Corey was trying to flip. Crozier says it wasn't a regular thing.
Yeah, I met her just 2 times. I think I talked to her a couple more times after, but just to see, you know what I mean? Hey, because somebody's spending, you know what I mean? $500-600.
Is that what 30 would run about $500 or $600?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not just the drug sales themselves, it's the timing.
There were 30 text messages exchanged between Carmen and Corey on Valentine's Day 2022, the day of that infamous sandwich.
And the other day is February 26th, which is right before Eric's death.
Now law enforcement has the drug link through Carmen, and they have the financial information.
Corey Richens was in massive debt. She was trying to funnel money back into her own real estate and house flipping business.
You add this all up, and it's finally enough for police to make their move.
A woman who wrote a children's book about grief after the death of her husband now faces charges for his murder.
Corey Richens is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and 3 counts of possession of narcotics with intention to distribute.
I woke up in the morning to headlines of Utah mom and children's grief book author arrested and charged with murder.
It was shocking. It was unbelievable.
I just couldn't fathom it. Like, not Corey. Why her? Like, it just became this huge story because she wrote that children's book.
They are trying to ruin and convict an innocent mother.
The simplest answer is often the correct one. It was most likely an accidental overdose.
I will take it to my grave that Corey did not do this. I too believe it's an accidental overdose.
For Corey Richens, she's either victim or killer. There is nothing in between. Is she a widow who had lost her husband and the father of her children tragically, or did she plan this all out to get from under some massive debt?
In my experience, money and love are 2 of the most powerful motivators for a murder. Now, police know about the money, and there may be a romantic angle as well. If Corey wasn't with Eric on Valentine's Day, and she wasn't, who was she with?
My kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year.
And to make sense and process, I'm sure.
Right now, we have the arrest of a Utah mom who wrote a children's book about grief after her husband's death. She has now been charged with killing him.
I'm new to all of this as a widow, as a wife, but also, you know, with my kids.
I'm thinking she's just powering through. She's trying her best, maybe not to cry, maybe not to get too emotional. Toxicology report found 5 times the lethal dosage of fentanyl in his system.
This last page, particularly poignant. I will forever love you, my sweet baby, until we see each other again. Yes, I am with you.
Written as though it's in the father's words for their boys.
You are an amazing woman, and we thank you for being vulnerable and sharing this and touching the lives of others.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. So,
thank you, Corey.
guys.
Thank you. All right, GTU is back with more.
State prosecutors say they do have enough evidence against Corey Richens to proceed with a trial.
The imminent charge of murder, allegedly at this point, but still, naturally, you're thinking, can I believe what she said?
On May 8th, 2023, Corey is arrested and charged with the aggravated murder of her husband, as well as several counts of possession of illicit drugs with the intent to distribute.
Finding that out was such a shock. I mean, talking about this now, it still blows my mind.
This could all very well be the perfect crime. A storybook ending where she thought she couldn't get caught.
It's a story that resonates because it's sort of this idea that she's two very different people, a Jekyll and Hyde situation. She was so empathetic at first glance, and then the story becomes much more sinister.
In a June 2023 hearing where Corey's going to find out if she makes bail or not, she appears in street clothes, but she is in shackles. And she has this look of confidence on her face, almost as if she thinks this is still going to go her way.
Prosecutors call 3 witnesses to testify as to why Corey Richens should not be released pending prosecution.
And the defendant came to the door and wrote a check from her business for $1,300 for the purchase of the fentanyl.
The initial bail hearing had a forensic accountant going into her finances. It went over the phone records and some of her searches on her phone after her husband's death.
During the bail hearing, the cell phone expert presented evidence that prosecutors said was a sign of consciousness of guilt.
Consciousness of guilt can be virtually anything that a criminal defendant does that is consistent with them understanding that they are guilty. Some of the more interesting internet searches included luxury prisons for the rich in America, can cops uncover deleted messages, iPhone, if someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as, and finally, what is a lethal dose of fentanyl?
Those internet searches did not come until after Corey had been given a search warrant that was executed on her home. That search warrant laid out that they believed that Eric had died from a lethal dose of fentanyl, that she had murdered him with it. And so, to now say, well, she searched it, so it's the consciousness of guilt, I think it's human nature. Someone hands you something and says, hey, we think you poisoned them with fentanyl, and you're like, I don't even know what a lethal dose of fentanyl is. What do? We Google search.
Prosecutors argue that the motivation behind Eric Richens' death is that Corey Richens was in massive debt.
Being bad with money does not make you a murderer.
The defense makes the argument that the prosecution has no case because they have no way of showing how the drugs ultimately got into Eric's system.
They went through the home and they found absolutely no forensic evidence to substantiate their allegation that she must have given Eric fentanyl in this drink.
But perhaps the most compelling argument was made by Eric's sister, Amy Richens, during her victim's impact statement.
Eric was a family man who always strove to be the absolute best father and husband. I go through the terrible sequence of events. I wonder when he realized he was in mortal danger. This last year has been a living hell for our family. We have watched as Corey has paraded around portraying herself as a grieving widow and victim while trying to profit from the death of my brother.
But the circumstances of this case weigh soundly against granting pretrial release of any kind.
Since Corey was arrested, she's been held in the Summit County Jail. Corey not only has been separated from her children, at this point she lost custody of her children.
The state of Utah takes her kids away, even though she's presumed innocent, because Utah has a law that allows the court to do that when one spouse is suspected of causing the death of the other spouse.
And it's while she's in jail that authorities make what appears to be a stunning discovery.
Deputies did what's called tossing her cell, where they go in, they essentially perform a search, and they found a letter that the prosecution believed to be very, very significant in the case.
Since her arrest, Corey Richens, the aspiring writer, is being held in Utah Summit County Jail, and she's at it again.
During a sweep of Corey's cell, an officer uncovers a 4-page letter. At the top of the first page, it says, "Walk the dog," with an exclamation point. And prosecutors argue that this letter is a message for Corey's mother to relay to her brother Ronnie what he needs to say to help get her off.
It reads in part, "Here's what I'm thinking, but you have to talk to Ronnie. He would probably have to testify to this. Eric told Ronnie he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico from the workers at the ranch. Reword this however he needs to make the point with Mexico and drugs."
Prosecutors say this is evidence of witness tampering, of influencing a person's testimony that could potentially take the stand in her case, and providing a story that is alternative to how Eric had gone to Mexico and possibly obtained drugs while there.
Of course, that's hugely significant from the perspective of detectives and the prosecution.
I mean, she just explained to me that it was some fairy tale book that was loosely based on what's going on, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that makes it very obvious that it's not true.
Corey has always maintained that the Walk the Dog letter was part of a greater manuscript. Not only was it attorney-client communication, it was also attorney work product. Is this damaging? Does she admit that she committed murder in it? Absolutely not.
So the question becomes whether a jury will see this as, Corey insists, as a fictional manuscript, or further evidence of her guilt.
First with the death of her husband and this children's book, Are You With Me? And now with this 4-page letter, you see Corey writing herself into the plot. It is Corey's own written word that prosecutors keep coming back to as evidence that she is, in fact, at the center of this.
The Camas mom, accused of killing her husband and then writing a children's book about grief, is facing more criminal charges.
So in March 2024, the prosecution amended their complaint to include an allegation of attempted murder.
This is the attempted murder charge for the poisoned Valentine's Day sandwich that Eric ate just weeks before his death.
Eric supposedly saying that he thinks his wife is trying to poison him it's absolutely absurd.
And the heat is about to be turned up even higher on Corey. With all the media coverage on her case, someone was watching. And that someone reached out to Eric Richens' family, wanting to clear a guilty conscience.
That someone is 41-year-old Josh Grossman, who Corey had hired as a handyman at a home that she was renovating.
Authorities learned that Grossman and Corey had been carrying on a years-long affair. According to investigators, the lovers texted almost daily.
I want you today, every day, not just sexually, but physically, mentally, every day. When I wake up, I do want a future together.
So in addition to the financial motive here, we also have a totally separate motive, and that is she's having an affair where she's repeatedly communicating with this man, talking about how much she wants to be with him and how much she loves him.
Among the frequent text exchanges, in February of 2022, Corey wrote, "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you."
You know, I'll acknowledge the timing of the texts are not ideal. You know, is this evidence of murder? No. But is it one of those things that may weigh in the back of a juror's mind when they're thinking about how to weigh all this other evidence? I think that absolutely becomes the case.
We're following breaking news out of Summit County for you. The judge granted a request from the defense team to withdraw from her case.
Suddenly, defense attorney Sky Lazaro withdraws from the case, citing a conflict of interest involving her law firm.
And this preliminary hearing is a critical right that every single...
Replacing Lazaro is public defender Kathy Nestor and co-counsel Wendy Lewis. Together, the defense attorneys have more than 30 years of experience.
Whenever legal counsel changes in a case, this will heavily stall any sort of outcome because now a new attorney has to come on, build a rapport with Corey, and learn the case inside out.
In May 2024, just days after her new lawyers are appointed, Corey makes her first public statement in an audio recording released to ABC News.
The world has yet to hear who I really am, what I've really done, or what I really didn't do. What I've really done is protect Eric at all costs. What I really didn't do is murder my husband. I could not and would not ever do that to Eric, or anyone for that matter. I'm asking the world to give me a chance.
And Corey Richins will have that chance in court. While the narcotics charges were dropped, she has pleaded not guilty to the remaining charges, including 2 counts of insurance fraud. One of those charges alleges that Corey took out a life insurance policy on Eric without his knowledge.
When you throw in a financial motive, that's big, that's huge. That she needed Eric Richins dead, that's financial motive is massive. It's big. But then you throw in an affair, you throw in a love story. Now you're talking multiple motives.
The state first has to prove that he was murdered. You know, that's step one. And they've got to be able, if I'm the jury, I mean, I want to know how. You know, you can't just say he died, she was there, it must have been her, you know, because she had an affair. They're going to have a hard time connecting those dots.
All eyes on Utah this morning as the Corey Richins murder trial begins.
The murder trial of Corey Richins is now underway.
Nearly 3 years after her arrest, Corey Richins is in court right now for day 1 of that trial.
We'll be inside of that courtroom all week, bringing you the latest.
I knew that this trial would be big. I didn't know it was going to be this big.
This story, just in a quiet community that doesn't have things like this happening, is obviously a pretty big deal.
This is a small courthouse, sort of off the beaten path in the beautiful mountains of Utah, near Park City, Utah.
Most people expect that there will be 12 people on a jury, but in this case, there were 8 jury members, 6 men, 2 women.
My name is Laura, and I was the jury foreperson in the Corey Richins murder trial. Before being selected as a juror, I had heard or read just a couple headlines, but I never really looked at stories. I really knew nothing about the case.
Corey looks nervous. She's worried. She doesn't have that same confidence she did a few years ago.
While the situation appears tough for Corey, she still has her supporters.
I'll be in the courtroom right there with her family, supporting her every second, every minute, every day, as long as it takes. She will beat this. Mark my words.
All right, we'll now proceed with opening statements.
The prosecutor, Brad Bloodworth, is very direct. He gets right to business.
In opening statements, the prosecutor had a laundry list of motives as to why Corey would have killed her husband.
The evidence will prove that on the day that Eric died, Corey Richens owed over $4.5 million to over 20 different lenders. That Corey Richens was chronically unhappy in her marriage. That Corey Richens murdered Eric for his money and to get a fresh start at life.
On the defense side, they start with someone else's voice, Corey's voice, the 911 call she made the night Eric died.
911, what's the address of the emergency? My husband's not breathing. He's cold. And he's not breathing?
Those were the sounds of a wife becoming a widow.
The defense urged the jurors to focus on the 6 hours leading up to Eric's death and not 6 years prior.
So those 6 hours, somewhere in that time, Eric Richens died. Somewhere in that time, he ingested a fatal dose of fentanyl. What you're never going to hear is how that fentanyl got inside of him, because there is zero evidence of that.
The witnesses that the state started with were powerful.
Your Honor, the state calls Katie Richens Benson.
They called Eric's sister, Katie, to the stand.
That you received a phone call about Eric.
Yes, it was early in the morning.
Who called you?
My dad did.
What did he say?
It's not easy. He was screaming and crying and said, Eric's not breathing, Eric's not breathing. Sorry, guys. This was the worst day of my life. I'm sorry.
The state needs to convince the jury that Corey purchased that lethal dose of fentanyl with the intention to kill.
When Carmen takes the stand, all eyes are on her. She makes or breaks this case for the state.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir.
Remember, Carmen Lauber was facing a lot of trouble with the law, but now she's testifying with immunity. She made a deal with prosecutors if she tells the truth about how Corey Richens purchased fentanyl from her.
She's pretty much getting a out-of-jail-free pass for her testimony.
She comes clean. The first part of her testimony is essentially Carmen Lauber laying out all of her sins for the entire world.
Have you ever sold drugs?
Yes.
Do you have a criminal history involving drugs?
Yes.
Carmen became very emotional on the stand, and yes, she was given a deal for her testimony, but if you believe her, she insists that isn't the only reason that she's doing this. She says she's trying to right a wrong for her role in all of this.
Did you ask Corey Richens about Eric's death?
Yes, I did.
What did you ask her?
I said, please tell me these pills were not for him. When they had mentioned that it was from an overdose, that hit hard. Only for the fact that if that's what happened, I needed to step up and take accountability of my part in this that happened and what I was asked for.
Defense attorneys love witnesses like Carmen because she has a criminal record. They are going to go after her on her credibility, especially about the drug charges.
And you lied about it? Yes. All right. That's what addicts do when you're using. That's true. Addicts lie. All right. Active addicts.
Next, the state calls the person they say put those drugs in Carmen's hands, Robert Crozier. Remember, he's the one prosecutors say sold her the fentanyl that killed Eric.
Were you selling pills in late 2021 and early 2022?
Selling Roxy's then, yes.
But on cross-examination, the defense points out that he had changed his story and is now saying those pills weren't fentanyl.
When you initially agreed with detectives that you might have sold fentanyl, you were
high, you were coming down, and you don't remember saying that specifically. True.
That is correct, yes.
All this testimony was crucial for attempting to piece together the how. But what was really mind-blowing was the why. And that testimony came from Corey's longtime friends.
Becky Lloyd is someone that was a friend of Corey and Eric, and someone that ended up working at C&E Masonry. Becky testifies that there was an evening in December during Christmas time that Corey and Becky started talking and having a bit of a heart-to-heart.
She talked about how she was feeling trapped. She was feeling like there wasn't an easy way forward out of the marriage. And she said that in many ways it would be better if he were dead.
Corey's lawyers pounce, challenging Becky's memory.
A couple of weeks after Eric died, you gave an interview about this conversation you and Corey had.
Yes.
And isn't it fair that in that first interview, you never mentioned anything about saying it would be better off if Eric was dead, did you?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
I don't recall.
Okay.
Your Honor, the state calls 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋
𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 is called to the stand. This is Corey's best friend, someone she's known since middle school.
I've known I was going to take the stand for 4 years now, and it's been a nightmare. There was a lot of emotions in walking in the courtroom, and then seeing Corey, it felt like I was about to betray her going on the stand, and I didn't like that feeling.
Are you one of her best friends?
Yes. Yeah, I was, yeah. When I was asked on the stand if she was my best friend or not, I don't know, because I'm now learning a completely different side of this person that I knew and loved for the last 20 years.
Allie should be a strong witness for the prosecution. They want her to tell the jury about a conversation she had with Eric about that infamous Valentine's Day sandwich, but it sort of backfires on them.
He said that he thought that Corey had tried to poison him, but it was more of a funny story. It was like an allergic reaction is what we had thought it was. We were all laughing.
And that past laughter has now turned to loss.
I wish I could say it was nice to see my friend, but I miss my friend. But things are different now.
Having your best friend take the stand is one thing.
Your Honor, the state calls Robert Josh Grossman.
But when your ex-lover walks into the courtroom, well, that's just a whole other level.
Mr. Grossman, you need a minute or two?
I don't know what I need, man.
Please have a seat. Mr. Bloodworth, the state's next witness, please.
The most anticipated witness the state is about to call, it's a bombshell.
Your Honor, the state calls Robert Josh Grossman.
Josh Grossman is the man that Corey was having an affair with. She said she was in love with him.
And he's the one who wrote those text messages to Corey.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, subject to the pains and penalties of perjury?
The swearing in of a witness is usually a pretty routine thing in a courtroom, but not this one.
While he's being sworn in, they're asking if he's going to be honest. He doesn't know how to answer it.
Sir, have a seat for me if you don't mind.
I've never seen this moment before, where the judge has to explain what he needs to do.
Mr. Grossman, do you understand the difference between what's true and what's not true?
I do.
And then Josh says, okay, I understand. Yes, I'm going to be honest in my answers. And right away, Josh has our attention.
Sir, do you know Corey Richards?
I do.
And why did you move to Utah?
To work with her, help her flip houses.
Josh is quiet. He has this southern accent. He's a redhead, like Eric.
He served in the military, including combat in Iraq.
Eric came from an affluent ranching family, and Josh was a man from South Carolina who was essentially couch surfing.
She took care of me, you know. I lived for free. She gave me money whenever I needed it. I just, you know, I liked her, so I'd worked for free.
His body is slouched. He fidgets.
During that time that you were romantically involved with Miss Richens, did you love her?
Yes.
During that time, did you feel that she loved you?
I think she did.
So this, of course, gives prosecutors more than just a financial incentive for Eric's death.
The prosecution introduced a series of text messages between Josh and Corey. They put them up on the screen for a painfully long period of quiet time, allowing everybody to read them.
They were sad. They were very corny at times. He said, you know, I tend to fall head over heels in love with someone. Corey seemed a little less authentic, like she was kind of leading him on.
I want to know everything about you. It's part of being in love.
There's something specific you want to know? I will be up all night wondering, babe.
The text ranged from poetic confessions of love, almost had like a middle school feeling about it.
I love you. I love talking to you, being with you. I don't have that in my marriage, and I really enjoy my relationship and love for you. But you're right. We both know this love triangle can't go on forever.
He looks so uncomfortable as the world reads his private text messages.
I love you. K, kind. O, outgoing. U, unique. R, romantic. I, inches away from signing her divorce papers and falling madly in love with her soulmate.
Too late. I have already fallen. Night.
There's this moment where he starts crying.
I'm watching this and wondering, what is the jury thinking right now?
We couldn't talk about it. You could see in people's faces and their eyes, like, ugh. That was heartbreaking.
Josh presented himself as very sincere and genuine, sad, brokenhearted. It was kind of devastating to watch him on the stand.
The court, I think, was very patient with him.
Do you need a minute or two?
I don't know what I need.
Let's just start with that. Why don't we take pause for a moment.
The text between Josh and Corey evolved. Corey sort of suggesting to Josh her dream life, which would be to live with him in the guest home of the Midway Mansion and run a event center together and raise children together.
I have a crazy dream. I divorce and come up with millions and millions. We buy Midway and live in guest house and rent out the huge house as a big event center. $15,000 a day. Raise some kids, have a little farm. Deal?
You see all of these exchanges, and they contextualize what that relationship was.
And then Corey sends her boyfriend a plea in the form of a text, and that's less than 48 hours before Eric is found dead.
She texts roughly, hang in until Friday. Well, what was Friday? Friday was the day Eric Richens died.
Life is going to be different, I promise. Can I try Friday? Give me a few days. Hang in there until then, please.
The relationship between Josh and Corey just fizzled out. It was in the weeks after Eric passed away.
He testifies that he and Corey take a drive, they stop, and they sit in her car and talk.
Josh testified that Corey asked him a very important question, perhaps a very revealing question.
What sir did she ask?
She asked if I had ever killed anybody.
And was that specific to killed anybody while serving in Iraq?
Right.
Did you respond?
I did.
Did she ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Sir, what was that follow-up question?
She asked me how it made me feel or something along those lines.
Grossman's dramatic and emotional testimony comes to a close, and then something utterly mind-blowing unfolds in the courtroom with the defense team as they are about to present their case.
Ms. Lewis, Ms. Nestor, what's the plan?
Ready to go.
Who's defense counsel's first witness?
Can we have just a minute?
Yeah.
We have a couple of options.
Understood.
The prosecution's case took 13 days, and the defense's case was expected to go 7 to 10 days.
Corey's defense attorneys are whispering to each other back and forth, and it seems like they're trying to decide who to call first. But that is not what we got.
Your Honor, actually at this time, the defense intends to rest.
They said they were calling no one and also rested. It was an absolute shock.
I was very surprised that there was no defense.
So when the defense rested without presenting any witnesses, my mouth, I think, dropped open. There has to be another side of the story, and we can fill in the little holes. And then when they didn't call anyone, I was shocked.
Why would Corey Richins' defense rest without calling anyone? They may believe the prosecution didn't make out their case, that having any witness on the stand wouldn't make sense because they've already won their case.
Do you understand that you have the right to testify at trial?
Yes, I do.
Are you following your attorney's advice and waiving your right to testify at trial?
Yes, I am.
Prosecution and the defense have presented their closing arguments. Judge Mrazek instructs the jury, and court's dismissed. Then, on the same day that the trial ends, and just within a few hours, there's word from the court.
Okay, I just received some news that a verdict is in.
No way.
If you feel overcome with emotion, just look down. We cannot have any outward reaction. Mark?
Yeah.
I told my kids early on that Eric had died, and my kids were devastated. I said along the way, sometimes it looks like Corey might have done it, but and then my kids would say, well, did she? And I'd say, I don't think so, but it sometimes looks like it.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Corey is innocent. I know my little sister. She loves her boys way too much to take their father away from them.
State of Utah versus Corey Richins. Ms. Richins is present.
After deliberating for just under 3 hours, the jury informs the court they've come to an agreement.
The court is informed that the jury has reached a verdict. Would you please hand the verdict form to the deputy? Ms. Richins, please stand. Count 1, aggravated murder. We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Corey Richins, is guilty of aggravated murder.
Corey Richins is found guilty on all counts.
The entire 3 hours was constant, robust, electrifying discussion. There were some people who were sort of on the fence with some of the elements, like they felt that she was guilty, but maybe the state didn't meet the burden. And so we focused on what some of those issues were. They gave them pause, and then we all discussed at length, and that helped us kind of come to the conclusion, and it helped people jump off the fence. To convict a woman of murder was absolutely heartbreaking.
Corey's friend, 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 watched the verdict live online.
Guilty.
Eric was my friend too. I didn't choose Corey over Eric, but I've lost both of them. She was somebody that meant a lot to me. Her family meant a lot to me, and they meant a lot to my kids. And it's a loss. Nobody wins in this.
After the verdict is read, Eric's family and friends gather outside of the courthouse and embrace each other.
Justice is served.
Yep. Justice. 4 years ago, our family lost the brightest light. Eric is deeply loved and missed every single day. We are grateful to everyone who has worked tirelessly to bring justice for Eric. Our focus is now on honoring Eric's life and supporting his boys as we all continue to heal. Thank you all for being here.
In a statement to ABC News, the Richens family wrote that the justice system has now fairly run its course, and we believe the jury's verdict was just and accurate. There is a hole in our family that cannot be filled, but now at least we have definitive closure. Corey Richens will return to that courtroom to learn her sentence on May 13th, which is no ordinary day. That would have been Eric Richens' 44th birthday. She faces up to life in prison. And her legal troubles are far from over.
She's facing a whole other criminal indictment with multiple counts of mortgage fraud, money laundering, forgery, bad checks. These are serious allegations.
One of the real tragedies in this case is Eric and Corey's kids. Their father tragically passed away. Their mother's parental rights have been terminated. She has forever lost her children. Those children have been adopted by one of Eric's sisters.
There are 3 little boys at the heart of this.
Just love. They have a lot of love surrounding them. They're great boys, and they're gonna be fine.
He was an amazing father, brother, son, nephew, friend. He was an amazing person with the most contagious laugh out there.
I'll remember Eric's laugh. If I can hear it in my head. He needs to be remembered as just a loving dad. He had so much more life to live, and he wanted so much for his boys. I'm gonna remember just how much he loved them.
And that's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.
I'll show you how easily it can be done.
Our grandfather was a detective on one of the biggest unsolved murders in our generation.
This was a child who was put to bed by her parents and never woke up.
They just kept saying, no, no, ask God to raise her.
Police found evidence from the beginning that in their minds pointed directly to the Ramseys.
They knew at the time that there was DNA and that it was not the Ramsey's DNA.
We, the media, lapped up what the Boulder Police Department wanted to tell us.
All of us that wanted to pursue the intruder were being removed from the case.
And he just said, I have a name, I want you to write it down. And I did, and he said, that's where you start. All but one person on that list is innocent.
Then you got your killer.
That's why the case endures.
Until the day we die, we'll be looking for the person that murdered our daughter.
In 1996, a little girl named JonBenet Ramsey was 6 years old.
She was brutally assaulted and murdered on Christmas night in the basement of her home in Boulder, Colorado. Hey guys, welcome to our first ever podcast episode. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jessa.
And I'm Lexi.
And we're sisters.
I think there's a new generation who's into the JonBenet Ramsey case, who were her age and were told to stay inside by their parents when she was murdered.
I think, yeah, growing up it scared me a little bit because we were the same age and
same state and blonde hair, blue eye, it was a little bit scary.
I remember thinking that I could not believe that this happened like so close to our home. You think that your home is safe, that this place is safe, and you just don't think that it could have happened here, and it did.
The murder took place sometime between 10 p.m. on December 25th and 5:30 a.m. on December 26th, 1996.
They know a lot about the case. My two girls, they loved their grandfather.
Our grandfather was a detective on one of the biggest unsolved murders in our generation, the JonBenet Ramsey murder. And with this podcast, we want to talk about the JonBenet Ramsey case from our grandfather, Lou Smith's perspective.
Lou Smith was a really legendary detective from Colorado that was brought in early to investigate the homicide.
Once he got a hold of a case, he never let go, and he had great attention to detail.
Lou Smith made an 8-hour video presentation that includes notes on the case, potential suspects, the evidence he collected over the years. It's a virtual encyclopedia of the JonBenet Ramsey case.
My name is Lou Smith. I'm a retired homicide detective from the Colorado Springs Police Department, and I have worked the Ramsey case now for approximately 10 years. What I'm going to do today is to just show a presentation that was made back in 1998.
He had a history of closing cases. He had a 90% success rate.
He advocated for the victim and stood in their shoes.
So that's why we've chosen The Victim's Shoes as our podcast name.
This really meant something to him, and he really felt he needed to find the killer of this little girl, and he needed to do that for JonBenet.
And first and foremost, we wanted to continue our grandpa's legacy. That was one thing he asked for before he died. He wants the case to remain alive.
There's a saying here in Colorado that Boulder is 30 square miles of fantasy surrounded by reality.
It's very wealthy, it's well-to-do.
Boulder looked like something out of a storybook in many ways, especially the neighborhood in which the Ramseys lived.
John and Patsy Ramsey lived in a 6,700 square feet Tudor there on 15th Street.
What I'd like to do first is to just talk a little bit about the Ramsey family. John Ramsey had interest in sailing and flying. Patsy Ramsey was the mother.
John and Patsy Ramsey had 2 children together. Their firstborn was Burke, 9 years old, and JonBenet, 6.5, in kindergarten.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a wife and a mother. John used to just tell people that I invested in futures, the futures of my children. That's how I usually answer my occupation.
My name is John Andrew Ramsey. JonBenet's half-brother. JonBenet would go around and ask everybody how their day was and what they did, and he was just an energetic and fun kid.
By all accounts, they were a happy couple. Patsy was a high society woman from Atlanta. John was a smart guy who had just been nominated or voted as Entrepreneur of the Year.
Patsy Ramsey was a stylish woman. She was a former beauty queen, Miss West Virginia.
Oh, that is interesting because the case had gained so much attention because JonBenet was in pageants.
By the time JonBenet was 4 years old, she was in the pageant system with big hair and lots of makeup.
I think it starts with the video of JonBenet. It starts with the fact that you have this beauty pageant video of a 6-year-old. That is where this starts, is people start saying, what's that about? How could that have played in?
I think it also touches on parents who have young kids, like, could this happen to me?
I really believe that if we hadn't seen the beauty pageant photos of JonBenet Ramsey, it might have just gone into the ether as another child murder. Hundreds of children are murdered in America every year. But this one captivated us because we saw the beauty pageant pictures.
Hello, I'm Patsy Ramsey. This is JonBenet. She's 4, Burke is 7.
Well, Christmas seemed to be kind of a crescendo for our family. It just became this
moment that we all look forward to, and it's a day of peace and quiet.
Christmas was Patsy's favorite time, and she really went all out. She had a Christmas tree for every room, and every tree had a theme. The windows were done with garland, the staircases had garland, there were red ribbons everywhere.
Everything was about entertaining, and she loved people. She loved to make people feel good.
And from all of us at our house to everyone at your house, Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Years.
There was plenty to celebrate in the Ramsey home. Patsy Ramsey had recently been declared clear of this ovarian cancer that she had battled. And that was a huge relief to come back from stage 4 cancer. Plenty to celebrate that Christmas.
So on Christmas Day, the Ramsey family opened presents at their home that morning. Patsy made pancakes, JonBenét rode her bike around on the patio, and both JonBenét and Burke had friends over to play that morning.
The kids went outside to play with their friends with their new presents. They were going to a friend's house for dinner that night.
We were going to leave early the next morning for a trip to our summer cottage in Michigan. It was going to be the first time we'd gotten all of our family together in Michigan for kind of a post-Christmas celebration. So we came home, went to bed. JonBenét was asleep when we arrived home. We took her to bed, got Burke to bed, set the alarm, and went to sleep.
The next morning, Patsy was up first.
You get up, you're dressed, what happens?
I went down our steps from our bedroom to the second floor. Then I started walking down the spiral staircase. And as I came to the bottom of the stairs, there were 3 pages neatly laid across one of the runs of the stairway.
She picked up the note and she started to read it.
I just remember when I read, "We have your daughter," it just, this overwhelming fear.
And then?
Then I just screamed for John, screamed.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on. What's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God!
I was the call taker that night shift when the call came in.
Police, what's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? Oh my God! Please.
She's hysterical, and she says there's a kidnapping.
Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's right here. Oh my God, please.
The note said, if you do anything, if police come, if FBI come, your daughter will die. You called 911.
Yes, I did. I had to do something. I had to take action.
And I mean, all this happened in a matter of moments.
Patsy calls 911 at 5:52 a.m. and the first officer arrives at 5:55.
Wow, that's fast.
I know, that's really fast. More friends start to arrive and more officers start to arrive. So at this point, lots of people are at the house.
We called friends for help at that point. Your daughter is gone.
Desperate.
She's in the hands of a madman.
My phone rang. Pam, they've got her. What do you mean they've got her? They've kidnapped JonBenét. She's gone.
What was the atmosphere like as you sat and waited?
Well, it was awful. First of all, we didn't know whether the kidnapper was going to call that day because the note said, "I will call you tomorrow. Get plenty of rest." I was deathly afraid that tomorrow was in fact the 27th.
You lose all perception of time, of place. You've just been dealt a horrible, crushing blow.
The police came in just before 6 o'clock in the morning on the 26th of December, thinking that we had a missing child. They go into this beautiful house with 18 or so rooms.
And they did a cursory search of the residence, and they didn't find anything.
The mistakes they made were outrageous, they were mystifying, they were mistake after mistake after mistake.
The police did a terrible, terrible job securing that scene. And if you don't secure the scene, you don't get good evidence. People were streaming through that house. They were in the kitchen, they were in the living room. There were some friends of Patsy's that were helping her wipe up the kitchen. There could have been fingerprints there.
You had friends that were Windexing the sink and washing dishes. And
people were making toast in the kitchen. And yes, a kidnapping is a crime scene, but we were so focused on getting JonBenet back. That was the task.
What we have learned is that everyone should have been sequestered into an area so that people weren't roaming around the house.
And that was a mistake on my part. The reason I didn't is because these people were the Ramsey support system. There was no information at all to indicate the family was involved at that point.
It was a crime scene, and it was getting contaminated. The note was being passed around and reviewed by all of their friends.
Of all of the evidence left behind, that ransom note is the most baffling. Number one, it is too damn long. A ransom note is not that long. A ransom note says, I have your child, I want $1 million, I'll call you later.
This is the infamous ransom note. It begins,
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully.
It was 3 pages long, and some people believe that a kidnapper that was truly kidnapping somebody would have written a very direct and to-the-point ransom note.
3 pages? What was that about?
That ransom note was the War and Peace of ransom notes.
Who would write a 3-page rambling ransom note other than someone trying to cover their tracks who was in the house?
It's the weirdest ransom note I've ever read.
You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills.
You think about this number and how is it relevant? And it's relevant because John Ramsey got a bonus from his company for $118,000. How many people knew that? I'm going to guess not a lot of people.
Our grandpa compared the note to some examples that he found in movies.
John?
The movie Ransom was playing in Boulder.
I have your son.
Oh, Jesus.
I want $2 million.
Oh, God.
In that particular movie, a fat cat industrialist, his son was kidnapped. There's a lot of the same verbiage in this note as was in even the note that was written in that particular movie.
If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies.
If you talk to anyone, I don't care if it's a Pekingese pissing against a lamppost, the girl dies.
You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John.
Do not attempt to grow a brain.
Our guy's a real watcher of that particular type of movies.
Dan, what does this tell you in terms of evidence?
First of all, that someone felt comfortable spending the time writing this long note in the house.
And whoever wrote the note is about to go from a kidnapping suspect to a murder suspect.
The ransom note had indicated there would be a call between 8 and 10 a.m.
And the police had prepped me on how to respond in a phone call, and it's very important you hear JonBenet's voice.
Police officers were leaving at 9:30 and 9:45 before that time period of the phone call had even expired. One lone detective was left on the scene.
Detective Linda Arndt is left behind in the house with John and Patsy Ramsey.
She didn't have extensive homicide experience managing a kidnapping and what was about to unfold. This was likely pretty overwhelming for one lone police officer.
Everyone is cleared but the family friends, victim advocates, and the detective.
So nobody was cleared?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me because everyone should be cleared from the scene.
The house is full of people. And so this is a crime scene that is now being destroyed piece by piece.
I was praying. Linda Arndt had said to me, we're hopeful that the kidnappers will just drop JonBenet off someplace. And I kept looking out the window, clutching this cross and just imagining that she was going to come running down the street.
They're waiting for a telephone call from the kidnapper. What's going to happen next?
10 o'clock comes and goes, and there's no acknowledgement that the deadline imposed by the author of the ransom note is come and gone.
Nobody seemed to mark it or freak out about it. She noticed John Ramsey checking his mail in the kitchen and thought that was odd.
Linda Arndt tells the restless John, why don't you look around the house, see if anything is missing or looks strange.
Check the house, top to bottom. Look for anything that might belong to JonBenet that is in place where it shouldn't be.
John took a friend with him. They went to the basement, and John opened the door.
You opened the door to the small room.
I knew instantly what I'd found. I'd found my daughter. She was lying on a white blanket. The blanket was wrapped around her. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. I immediately knelt down over her, felt her cheek, took the tape off immediately off her mouth. I tried to untie the cord that was around her arms. I couldn't get the knot untied. Picked her up, and I ran upstairs and laid her on the floor and still had a hope that she was alive.
And I see John Ramsey carrying JonBenet up the last 3 steps from the basement. She looked like she was sleeping. She had some marks on her face and on her neck. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite, and he asked if she was dead. And I said, yes, she's dead. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up.
She clearly felt in danger. At that moment, she made it clear that she thought that John Ramsey killed his daughter and that they might kill her. It was shocking to me that she would think that.
How is it that you have all these cops searching a home and nobody finds the body, but you ask John Ramsey to go look for things out of the ordinary, and he finds his daughter in a room that had never been opened by anybody in law enforcement? That's crazy.
He lays her on the living room floor where just a few minutes before, friends and neighbors have been walking and, you know, bringing in fibers and whatever to contaminate the scene. And then the coup de grace. He grabs a blanket, which is full of who knows what kind of contaminants, and throws it over the body.
Patsy was being kept out of the room, and I didn't want Patsy to see JonBenet laying there like that.
I remember walking in and seeing her lying there in front of the Christmas tree. I knelt down over her and just laid my body on her body and my cheek against her cheek, and it was cold. And Father Raw was there. And he started saying the last rites, I believe. And I just kept saying, no, no, you know, ask God to raise her.
So the kidnapping of JonBenet has turned into the murder of JonBenet.
JonBenet Ramsey was murdered in a horrific way, many injuries to this little girl's body.
We have the x-ray of her skull, which shows a fracture, a massive one.
Right. This is an 8-inch skull fracture, so we're talking a major blunt force. This is just a massive blow.
But the ultimate cause of death was strangulation with something called a garrote.
Brad, what type of a weapon is a garrote? How does it work?
It's a device of string, and it's wrapped around what ends up being a piece of a paintbrush. And what happens is, as JonBenet is losing consciousness, she's leaning forward. And so this gets tighter and tighter, and you can see how it cuts into my hand. You can see exactly why it cut into her neck. And that ultimately, according to the ME, is what killed her.
It seems to me that she had been attempting to remove the ligature from around her neck. And that tells me she was alive when she was garroted.
There were signs that JonBenet had also been sexually abused. The broken pieces of the paintbrush that were used for the garrote were also used to sexually assault her.
What does it tell you about the murderer? Just how vicious and awful this death was for her.
A person that would do this to a 6-year-old in this fashion clearly is into sort of sadistic behavior, that they like torture to a certain extent. This is clearly somebody who was really into this.
And was here with the intent to kill. There was no evidence of a break-in. There was no jimmying on the front door. There were 4 people in that house, and 1 died overnight. From the very beginning, they suspected the parents.
Within minutes of JonBenet's body being found, this was who they were going to go after, and that's what they did.
The police are thinking, we got to talk to those parents, and we got to talk to them right now before they start getting their story straight together.
They brought JonBenet's body out past the candy canes that were decorating the front of the house, and there were only like 2 reporters outside to capture that. And then the storm happened.
JonBenet Ramsey, the little girl in Colorado, was murdered.
Beauty queen JonBenet. JonBenet's murder has frightened residents of Boulder.
News outlets from around the world had descended upon Boulder and were just hiding in trees and bushes and digging through our trash, following me around town. I mean, it was war.
The JonBenet Ramsey case was completely out of control.
You also have to remember the O.J. Simpson case had wrapped up. The 24-hour news cycle, their content had dried up. And so along came the Ramsey family, and we fit right into that slot.
JonBenet Ramsey was a precocious 6-year-old. She had been strangled to death in the basement of her own home.
You have the shock, this incredibly horrendous crime, and then you have these videos that surface.
I wanna be a cowboy, sweetheart. I wanna learn to rope and to ride.
Of this beautiful young girl.
JonBenet Ramsey. Dark blonde hair and green eyes.
Dancing in her costumes, and those were the first viral videos.
She'd like to become an Olympic ice skater.
It's part of what turned it into an international circus.
Now we have Instagram and we have Snapchat, but back then, this was one of the first moments in time where something truly went viral. This little girl's image was everywhere overnight.
The biggest negative factor about John and Patsy Ramsey was that they had allowed their daughter to be in child beauty pageant contests, and people did not like them.
As our grandpa stated, this was a brutal, premeditated murder, not just a little doink on the head covered up by perverted staging.
It seems unimaginable to most parents out there that any parent could do something this brutal, this heinous to their own child, and yet police found evidence from the beginning that in their minds pointed directly to the Ramseys.
Particularly, Amy, when you start with children of this age, when they die, tend to die at the hands of their parents. So the focus is naturally going to be on the parents to begin with. Now, in the house, the ransom note is written on a pad that belongs to Patsy. So this is the notepad. This location right here is where the note was physically found by Patsy. The pen that was used was in the house.
So this is the garrote that was used in the murder of JonBenet, and it's a special significance because of what it was made from.
Yes, it basically is an artist's paintbrush that's broken, and what's important is that it actually came from Patsy's art supply.
And there were even fibers on the backside of the duct tape that had been on JonBenet's mouth from Patsy's clothing.
And that was very, very important. But there are problems because Patsy lived in that house. Would those fibers have been there anyway?
The police started thinking, well, maybe this is just a cover-up, that the Ramseys harmed their child some way, then panicked and tried to create basically a kidnapping scenario.
Patsy and John should have been taken to the police station immediately for separate interviews, for examination of their body for defensive wounds, for collection of their clothing. That never happened.
At this point, they haven't interviewed the mother or father. Not surprisingly, they're still very grief-stricken. They have not been in any kind of condition to be interviewed.
A couple of days after he finds his daughter's body in the basement, police speak with John Ramsey, but this is not a formal interrogation.
My father, myself, we all marched into that police station, gave blood, we gave hair, we gave fingerprints. The thing that really stuck with me is two detectives hand me their business cards, and one says narcotics officer and the other says auto theft. And I bury my head into my hands because I knew at that point we were in a bad spot. Boulder police didn't have the resources to solve a complex homicide.
John interviewed with Boulder police. Patsy's doctor said she was too medicated and unable to get out of bed.
The police were faced with lawyers and wealthy friends, people in the community who told the police, please give them room, they're grieving, what's the matter with you?
Though the police had spoken to the Ramseys, what they really wanted to do was formally interrogate them.
The police are thinking, we got to talk to those parents, and we got to talk to them right now before they start getting their story straight together.
Your lawyers advised you then not to submit to police questions. Why not, people say? Wouldn't you have wanted to tell them everything?
Well, I don't recall that our lawyers told us that at the time. We said, you know, yeah, we want to keep working with you, but can't you come here? We can't go out. Patsy was in bed. Patsy was barely able to move. We were perfectly willing and anxious to work with the police to find the killer. We had a higher priority at that point, and that was to bury our daughter.
The family is flying the body back to Atlanta for burial.
On New Year's Eve, JonBenet was laid to rest just outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
This service is in loving memory of JonBenet Patricia Ramsey.
We flew back to Atlanta to bury JonBenet, Atlanta being our home. Atlanta being where my oldest sister Beth is buried.
We give thanks today for JonBenet, for the love that she had for her parents.
I want to go back to the funeral.
Whatever we do, we're gonna go through it together. We may not get far, but sure as the star, wherever we are, it's together.
Wherever we are, it's together.
We sang that. She and I sang that together. We'd sing it driving in the car, and we just knew that we would always be together in everything. I wanted my children to know that I was with them through thick and thin, regardless of what happened in life. You know, unconditional love.
Oh, look at that. You can go places now.
Every murder case that I've ever done, the parents are so grief-stricken but they sometimes make a nuisance out of themselves at the police department.
The Ramseys, literally the day after JonBenét's funeral, sit down for a television interview.
The next thing the police knew, they were on CNN.
The Boulder police don't interrogate the Ramseys, but they remain the main suspects.
Many people found the Ramseys' behavior peculiar, suspicious, weird, off balance, and from that thought, they must be guilty.
When you realized that you two were the prime suspects, what did you think? What did you feel? What did you say?
Well, we were outraged. We were shocked. How could they think that? We were a normal family.
I just didn't believe it. You just can't believe it. I mean, we're suffering from having lost our child. And then for someone to accuse you, it's just, you can't believe that that would happen.
A lot of people said, you know, if that were me, I'd be on the steps of the police department finding the murderer of my daughter. Then they go on CNN and say they didn't do it.
If anyone knows anything, please help us.
We've sensed from our friends that this tragedy has touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people.
As a mother, my heart went out to this couple.
And if I were a resident of Boulder, I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
But my journalistic brain said to me, this isn't right. They should be talking to the police, not the public.
Police end their 10-day search of the Ramsey house and remove the crime scene tape.
It is unknown if the family intends to resume residency at the home. We have no comment on the whereabouts of the family at this time.
Starting from the beginning of this case, we, the media, lapped up what the Boulder Police Department wanted to tell us about what they were doing in the JonBené Ramsey case.
For the most part, the police were very tight-lipped in this thing. They didn't tell us a lot of secrets. They didn't leak a lot of information. Other than broadly, we think the mom did it.
People who believe Patsy killed their daughter believe it was over a bedwetting and then staged to look like an intruder.
The bedwetting theory was a big theory at the time. The bedwetting theory suggests that Patsy was angry with JonBené and killed her because the bed was wet.
I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. When you are standing on the brink of death with a terminal illness, your priorities suddenly line up. Bedwetting is totally insignificant. I love my children. I wouldn't harm them for anything in the world.
But Americans were fascinated with the possibility that the Ramseys might have done this.
What happened in that house? Did she go berserk and hurt JonBené, by accident, not on purpose certainly? Did Burke hurt her by mistake and cause her death?
It was leaked by Boulder police that it was possible that Burke Ramsey's voice was on the 911 call that Patsy had made.
Patsy? Patsy?
The 911 operator believed that she heard an unexplained voice at the end of the 911 call.
Patsy Ramsey has put the phone down, but she hasn't hung it up. And the 911 recording continues.
I heard her say, okay, I've called the police, now what? And I thought, huh. And then I heard two people talking to her, and I heard a male voice respond, and then I heard a more faint voice respond.
Some speculated at the time that faint voice might have been Burke, but the family denied it, saying he was asleep at the time. We asked an expert to weigh in on the call.
My name is Ed Primo. I'm an audio-video forensic expert, and I was asked about what people have heard throughout the years from this 911 call. Here we go.
What's your name? Are you happy? Oh my God!
So when Patsy is speaking to the operator, we could clearly see bright yellow and orange colors. And as I zoom in to the recording here, I can see the formants. This is a visual representation of sound. The brighter the color, the louder the volume. The sound changes right here, the section in question where people are hearing voices. We can see some sounds, but we don't see the formants like we saw over here. So I can't rely on those being words. There's just not enough signal-to-noise ratio in order to be able to perceive what those sounds are. They could be noise, and they could be voices. I just can't, as a scientist, arrive at a reasonable conclusion.
The Secret Service and the FBI also concluded that no additional conversation is audible.
I think we've given way too much weight on whether or not Burke Ramsey was present when Mom makes the 911 call. If Burke's voice was there or John Ramsey's voice is there, does that mean they're the killer?
And it's important to remember that the Boulder police never considered Burke a suspect. They suspected the parents, even though the Ramseys had no history of abuse or neglect of their children.
All the evidence shows me that up until this point, they were devoted parents.
Would you get up in the middle of the night and slaughter your child? We're parents. We love our children.
There's so many puzzle pieces here that just don't fit.
Do you really think your daughter's murderer will be found?
Yes, I do. Because the killer has never been pursued. An objective, wide investigation hasn't taken place. The parents have been focused on. That's all that's been done.
It might be an unknown entity then, not one of the suspects we've all been currently talking about and dissecting.
I don't think it's any of the suspects we're talking about.
What we know is that just within a few mile radius of the Ramseys' home, there was approximately 38 to 40 sex offenders in that area. And the question is, have they all been completely vetted?
Was it an accident? Was it intentional, premeditated?
I want to say something to the person or persons that took this baby from us. The list of suspects narrows. Soon, there will be no one on the list but you.
Our killer is John Bonet. How many victims has he had in the past? And how many victims is he going to have in the future?
The grand jury couldn't point the finger at one or the other, but they were convinced that it was one of the two of them and that the other one helped.
Go back to the damn drawing board.
There was a person seen going across the lawn of the Ramsey house.
Lou dedicated a big part of his life to finding John Bonet's murderer.
Detective Lou Smith was like, whoa.
He just said, I have a name. I want you to write it down.
Lou took all of the information that he had and developed a database.
3 generations of my family has been involved working on the Jean Benet Ramsey case.
First officer arrives at 5:55.
Wow, that's fast.
I know, that's really fast.
Lou Smith's family believes that all but one person on that list is innocent.
We're in better position today than we've ever been to solve the John Benet Ramsey case.
John Benet Ramsey!
Jean Benet was an entertainer. She would entertain at the drop of a hat.
She loved to sing and dance and perform. It was a natural for her.
I competed with John Benet. She had all these wonderful costumes and outfits, and she had this presence.
Third runner-up, John Benet Ramsey.
It wasn't really a competition to her. It was more of like, this is fun, like let's go on stage and do that.
My name is Jean Benet Ramsey, and I'm 5.5.
What is your favorite animal at the zoo?
The monkeys, because they laugh and stuff and hang around.
Today, that little girl would be 30 years old.
I was her age. She would be my age now. She would be pursuing her own career. She never got to grow up. She is frozen in time now.
Well, the police were convinced pretty early on that Patsy and/or John were involved. And you had a district attorney's office that was saying, not so fast. And that created enormous tension between the two.
Did you hear anything yesterday? I think there are some new developments.
Alex Hunter, the district attorney, wanted someone to come in with fresh eyes in this case and look at it from the perspective of a defense attorney. Who might have killed JonBenet as an intruder, not just the parents, but from the outside?
Boulder DA Alex Hunter brought Lou Smith out of retirement to help solve the Ramsey case.
One of the great challenges is to try to do the case right. And, you know, I think we're making efforts to meet that challenge by involving people like Lou Smith.
The legendary investigator Lou Smith. He had a history of closing cases.
He had such tenacity. He was a bulldog. Once he got something in his mind, you know, once he got the reins in his teeth, he was not letting go.
Lou Smith was my father. He was just known as, you know, the detective that solved cases. When he got to a murder scene, he spent time dictating everything he saw. Where the sun was in the sky, what the weather conditions were like, what the neighboring houses looked like. Our grandfather was a detective on one of the biggest unsolved murders in our generation. Prior to this case, Lou Smith had investigated over 200 homicide cases that led to arrests and convictions. Lou dedicated a big part of his life to finding JonBenet's murderer. When he started his investigation, he felt like everybody else did, that it was probably one of the two parents.
It seemed as though the parents were probably involved in it. I thought this would be a fairly easy case. I thought it would be a slam dunk. And I even remember talking to my daughter, I kind of joked with her, saying that, you know, if somebody did get in the house, it must have been Santa Claus coming down the chimney.
It was within a couple of days after my dad started on the investigation, when he had a chance to review pictures, the evidence, that he was already saying, I think that they need to look the other way. He was already noting in his journal that he felt that they needed to look at an intruder.
Lou came up with the intruder theory. You can't think about that theory without associating it with Lou Smith.
The first thing that stood out to him was an open window in the basement. There was a suitcase propped up against it.
He didn't buy the Boulder Police Department's conclusion that no one could get in that basement window. He began to say maybe somebody did get into that house.
I'll show you how easily it can be done.
So what did Lou Smith do? He went and climbed in the window himself with a camera rolling to prove that it could be done.
It really wasn't that difficult coming in that window.
But some say that the idea of somebody going in the window is complicated by something else that's spotted in the images of the crime scene.
When you go to a photograph of the actual window, there are cobwebs in the window, which could support that no one did go through this window. The big question is, could you have gotten through this window, this small window, without disturbing this cobweb? I think the answer to that is maybe. But the other important point is, how soon was this picture taken after JonBenet was killed? Because spiders can replicate webs very fast.
Also found in the basement by JonBenet's body, a shoe print, high-tech brand that did not match any shoes in the Ramsey's house. And then there's the high-tech footprint as well.
Then there's the high-tech footprint found next to JonBenet that I think the investigators believe, and maybe rightly so, that that's the bad guy's footprint.
Some argue the footprint could have been inadvertently left by police officers there at the scene. But another factor in Lou Smith's investigation, two strange marks on JonBenet's face and back.
the marks themselves, both on the back and on the face, were the same distance apart. Suddenly a little light went on, and it was just like, wait a minute, it was a stun gun.
Schmidt looked at other murders where a stun gun was known to have been used. He examined images of a crime victim who had a known stun gun injury.
And the marks are very similar to the face of John Bonet.
He also looked into an experiment performed using stun guns on pigs. These marks were also the same as the marks found on John Bonet.
When we did the pigs, we get perfect marks, just almost like on the back of John Bonet.
This brings back our grandpa's whole motto that things are usually what they seem. Don't make it complicated.
There's no reason at all for the Ramseys to use a stun gun, and the Ramseys don't have a stun gun. If it's not a stun gun, what is it? That's the question I always ask. You tell me what it is.
So everybody sort of poo-pooed and ridiculed the intruder theory until Lou Schmidt started to stand up and point out things that everybody else, from the Boulder PD to the general public at large, had overlooked or dismissed. He said, wait a second, we need to look at this again. It actually is possible. It actually is plausible. And in his view of it, it's actually the most likely thing that happened.
The police and the district attorney are at odds. The DA is looking at the intruder theory, the police focused on the parents, but both want to get the Ramseys to come in for a formal videotaped interrogation.
Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it.
Lou Schmidt thought that the Ramseys were being targeted unfairly.
Thought there was something drastically wrong. I had seen evidence of an intruder.
Within a few weeks of John Bonet's murder, police had an important clue: the discovery of foreign DNA on her body.
Crime scene detectives discovered DNA underneath John Bonet's fingernails and in her underwear that did not match anybody in the Ramsey family. That was not something that was made public for quite a long time.
They knew at the time that there was DNA in her panties, that it was mixed foreign DNA, and that it was not from Ramsey's DNA, not Patsy's, not John's, and not Burke's.
Detective Lou Schmidt was like, whoa, while you're pouring water all over the intruder theory, you're not revealing that you have found unidentified DNA and it doesn't match anybody in the Ramsey family.
Lou is just incensed that the focus is still being, well, it could be Patsy, maybe we need to get her to confess.
The Ramseys had been interrogated by police 4 months after John Bonet's death. But now authorities want the Ramseys to come in again for a formal videotaped interrogation.
There were months and months of negotiations. Things about whether they could be videotaped. What are the questions going to be? Should the Boulder police be a part of it? Because the Ramseys said, we don't trust the police. We don't want them there.
Ultimately, the interrogation took place at a different police department.
And at the end, the Boulder police had to watch it from another building.
The Ramseys finally sit down with the police for a videotaped interrogation in June 1998, a year and a half after Jean Bonet's murder.
Today is Wednesday, June 24th, 1998. I'm present at the Broomfield Police Department. Tricia Ramsey.
Tom Haney, who was one of the most respected homicide detectives out of Denver, was chosen to interview Patsy Ramsey.
Patsy Ramsey had a year and a half to prepare. I knew that it was going to be tough to get a spontaneous response.
Do you ever recall purchasing black duct tape like this? It seems like there can't be a house in the world that doesn't have duct tape because it repairs everything.
Well, I never liked it because it's so gooey. Isn't it gooey?
He started out softly and kindly and curious, And then he got pointed with his questions, and that made Patsy angry.
If I told you right now that we have, in the process of being examined, trace evidence that appears to link you to the death of John Bonet, what would you tell me?
Tell me to go retest.
How is it impossible?
I did not kill my child. I didn't have a thing to do with it.
She said it was impossible that we had physical evidence linking her to the crime.
I'm talking about scientific evidence.
I don't give a flying flip how scientific it is. Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it. John Ramsey didn't do it, and we didn't have a clue of anybody who did do it.
I am so taken with her swagger. She just tells them, you know, you think you have some evidence on me? Well, you...
The person that did this.
Lou Smith was assigned to interrogate John Ramsey.
When Lou interviewed someone, he pried anything out of people just by being understanding and really listening.
Now, John, I know this is touching right back on a very delicate spot. Was this tape wrapped around anywhere? Was it stuck down?
It was very firm across her lips.
I thought John was much more measured and composed. You don't see the drama. I see a lot of pain in that man.
Reached out, flipped the latch, opened the door, and immediately let it down.
Okay, and you say immediately?
There was a white blanket. I just knew I found her.
I think those tapes were so intriguing to watch, but the bottom line is there's nothing there that they could use to say, aha, we've got you.
Both John and Patsy deny in the interrogations that anyone in their family killed John Bonet.
And we want to do everything we can to help solve this case for you.
My dad's conclusions after that interview were just firmed up his belief that the Ramseys had nothing to do with this murder.
I'm not saying parents don't kill their kid. Parents do kill their children. So, but they're trying to say, Patsy, that their actions before, during, and after are all consistent with innocent people. You didn't do it.
My dad started getting frustrated as time went on because he felt that the case against the Ramseys was being slanted where no other evidence was coming in.
I thought there was something drastically wrong and that there was a gross injustice in this case. I had seen evidence of an intruder in the house that night.
Lou Smith thought that the Ramseys were being targeted unfairly, and he didn't believe the police were listening to him.
Smith so strongly disagrees with the prosecutor's focus on the Ramseys that he is resigning from the case, saying, "The case tells me John and Patsy Ramsey did not kill their daughter."
He wrote a letter to Alex Hunter telling them that he couldn't be a part of the persecution of these people, is how he termed it.
He wrote, "I intend to stand with this family and somehow help them through this and find the killer of their daughter."
My dad may have resigned from the district attorney's office, but he never stopped work on the case. He walked in John Bonet's shoes, and he owed it to her, he felt, to continue his investigation.
One thing Lou Smith fought to do was tell a grand jury his side of the story, the intruder theory.
There were too many questions, in particular, that DNA in the underwear that appears to have been from a man didn't match anyone's fingerprints.
Grand jurors arrived at the Boulder County Justice Center this morning and were escorted into the courthouse by sheriff's deputies.
I think Alex Hunter got shamed into calling a grand jury. I mean, he didn't do it until September 1998, almost 2 years later. And I think the media pressure and the pressure from the police department forced him to do it.
Good morning, Counsel.
And remember, this is after O.J. Simpson, where most people think the evidence of Simpson's guilt was insurmountable.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
And yet, he walked. Alex remembered that. He told me one time, "I don't want to spend 2 years of my life and $5 million of the taxpayers' money and lose in court.
Alex Hunter sent a grand jury for 13 months.
Are you surprised by anything you've seen?
No.
Over 13 months, those people heard over 100 witnesses.
My name is Jonathan Webb. I was a grand juror on the JonBenet Ramsey case. It bothers me that the murder of a little girl like this has gone on unsolved for essentially a quarter century.
Members of the Boulder grand jury looked very much like detectives themselves as they finally toured the Ramsey house.
From a crime scene perspective, it was very disturbing how she was found. She's on a concrete floor, a garrote around her neck, and she's 6 years old. That's pretty horrible.
Webb told us that the grand jury spent most of their time focused on two main issues. First, who wrote that ransom note?
We heard from 3 handwriting experts, and even though the handwriting experts couldn't definitively say that she wrote it, they all 3 came to the same conclusion that it could have been Patsy Ramsey.
The Ramsey defense team had their own experts who said that the comparison between the writing on the ransom note and Patsy's handwriting was not conclusive. We asked an expert to weigh in on the case.
My name is Jennifer Nasso. I am a forensic document examiner. Handwriting is a great piece of evidence to have because you can identify the writer of a piece of writing. Throughout the ransom note, there's potential that the author attempted to disguise their writing. It doesn't look smooth and fluid. It's very, very shaky. So it looks like someone was purposely trying to shake their hand to alter the way that the writing looks. This is an example from the ransom note, where you see that kind of typewritten formation of the letter A. This is also from the ransom note, where you see that regular printed A. There are similarities between the ransom note and Patsy Ramsey's writing. However, the similarities that are seen are very general in nature. They're characteristics that many people execute within their writing. So here is another example. This formation seen in the ransom note is 2 strokes, where there's the stroke downward, the pen is lifted up, and then the bowl is created. Right here, again, from the ransom note, where it starts the formation of the bowl and terminates upward. So down here are examples of Patsy Ramsey's known writing. And you do see some of those formations again. That is significant that we see each of the formations represented, but keep in mind this is one letter from the whole ransom note. Is it possible that Patsy Ramsey wrote the ransom note? Yes. Is it possible someone else wrote the ransom note? Yes.
And the grand jury believed that she wrote it.
The second focus for this grand jury, according to Jonathan Webb, was the viability of the intruder theory.
Smith actually presented his intruder theory to the grand jury.
This is the very first photo taken of the training room basement window. The window is wide open. Now, if I was a detective, I'd have said, wow, this is entry.
But the grand jury wasn't buying the intruder theory because of those cobwebs in the window.
The intruder theory didn't make sense to the grand jury. The Boulder police had photographed cobwebs. So for someone to get through a small opening like that and not disturbing a cobweb would be remarkable.
A grand jury does not decide guilt or innocence the way a regular jury does. The grand jury is only there to decide whether or not there is probable cause to charge the suspects with a crime.
We were troubled by to what level of confidence do we need to have to vote to indict? And it's the preponderance of the evidence, which means greater than 50%. And soon after that, we voted to indict.
Both Patsy and John are accused of permitting a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenet Ramsey. And then in the other one, did unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously render assistance to a person with intent to hinder the apprehension of the person. These two things together make it clear that the grand jury couldn't point the finger at one or the other, but that they were convinced that it was one of the two of them and that the other one helped.
This is 7 News at 5.
There is high anticipation in Boulder right now for a Ramsey decision, and we are about to hear an announcement from Boulder DA Alex Hunter.
I and my prosecution task force believe we do not have sufficient evidence to warrant the filing of charges against anyone who has been investigated at this time.
I was shocked. It's extremely unusual for a grand jury to vote to charge and the DA not charge.
And you think it was the right decision?
I think it was the right decision. I think no matter what you think about the case, I think that they would never have gotten a conviction.
Thank you very much.
There were too many questions, in particular, that DNA in the underwear that appears to have been from a man didn't match anyone they knew of.
We've done all this work to try and vet the Ramseys. What work have we done to truly vet other potential suspects in this case?
That's why Lou Smith continued investigating even after he resigned from the case.
Lou Smith calls me cold, and I said to him, I've been praying for somebody to call and one to listen. Well, I believe a friend of mine killed her.
But I think what turned this whole case has always been DNA. The killer left behind, I believe, part of his DNA.
Over nearly 13 years, Lou took all of the information that he had on this case and developed a database. In this particular murder, he thought that DNA would solve this case.
But Lou Smith couldn't have imagined the advances in DNA that were to come, advances that would lead to a number of big surprises in the case.
What was developed is a thing called touch DNA. So I just touched this picture, I touched the table. I've now left skin cells on both locations. In theory, that could be scraped, and they could match that up to my DNA.
In 2008, the then district attorney for Boulder, Mary Lacey, decided to do a new round of DNA testing on JonBenét's pajama leggings.
More than a decade later, the items were retested and they found something new. Remember, the previous analysis had already found DNA from an unknown male under JonBenét's fingernails and in her underwear. Now, this new touch DNA uncovered DNA from at least one unknown male, maybe two, on her leggings as well.
That's a pretty big thing. That's a pretty clear indication that somebody else was there. You've got DNA now in 3 places on JonBenét's body that doesn't match anybody in the Ramsey family, anybody, and nobody knows whose it is.
And so I think that's what drove the district attorney to make a comment that she's basically not going to look at the family any longer.
The news broke here at the district attorney's office with this incredible letter to JonBenét's father.
DA Mary Lacey wrote John Ramsey, "We do not consider your immediate family, including you, your wife Patsy, and your son Burke, to be under any suspicion in the commission of this crime."
John Ramsey appeared on a local newscast.
We're certainly grateful for an acknowledgement that we are innocent, that this was an intruder, which of course we've always maintained.
Somewhere, somehow, there may be a match to that DNA. Then you got your killer.
Our killer, JonBené, how many victims has he had in the past? And how many victims is he going to have in the future? And so this killer could still be murdering even today.
Lou Smith spent years organizing and investigating the evidence in the JonBené Ramsey murder case, but eventually he ran out of time.
When he got sick with cancer, he knew that his time was limited. And so during that time, he just talked to others about not letting this case die.
He had people coming every single day, 60 to 70, 80 people a day coming to see him. And they said their goodbyes. And during that time, he would still talk about the case.
I remember about the last 3 days, he had slipped into a coma, and the conversations would become one way, you know, and I don't know if he could hear me or not.
It's very much an honor to be here to celebrate Lou Smith's life and to share my thoughts with you. I'm John Ramsey. I had the opportunity to visit Lou a week before he died. Remarkably, during that time together, Lou talked a lot about the case. He hadn't given up. He never gave up.
When Lou Smith died, he passed the torch of the JonBenet Ramsey investigation onto his daughter, Cindy Mara, and she took it.
And he just said, I have a name. I want you to write it down. And I did. And he said, that's where you start. You know, we'd be glad to pay that. We don't have that electronic report, so we would need Boulder to send it. After my dad died, you know, a couple of us, our family, and then some of his old homicide partners, we just formed a team.
You want to go down to number 2, because that is an in-state one.
Yep.
What we all share in common is that commitment to fulfill Lou's dying wish that this case doesn't die with him. And I think it's that devotion, that respect, that love for Lou is what keeps our team moving forward.
There were a whole host of other possible suspects.
This is Bill McReynolds, the local Santa in town.
There's no way in the world that I could be involved in the death of this little girl. I adored her.
What a perfect suspect. Santa Claus. Wouldn't that have just tied it all up in a nice little bow?
Grandpa stated that if you can't show me a motive, show me evidence of bad character. If you can't show me evidence of bad character, show me evidence.
He had condensed everything he knew about every person of interest into a spreadsheet.
The team that his family created is confident that the killer's name is on that spreadsheet.
So what do we know about the person suspected of killing JonBenet Ramsey? The DA says the genetic profile from the DNA belongs to a male.
There were a whole host of other possible suspects, ranging from known criminals to friends of the Ramseys.
Brad, investigators looked beyond the Ramsey family. In fact, there was some speculation into potential involvement by 2 local men, correct?
Correct. Here you have Gary Oliva.
He was a homeless man who hung out at a church just a block and a half from the Ramseys' home. And he confessed that he killed JonBenet Ramsey. In fact, he called a friend right after she was killed, crying, sobbing, saying he'd just killed a little girl.
They took a look at him, but eventually eliminated him because there is absolutely no connection between he and the Ramseys, and his DNA, they used that to eliminate him. This is Bill McReynolds, the local Santa in town.
I was the Santa Claus for 3 years at their party, and I always liked the Ramsey party, so I called Patsy in particular and said it's time for our party.
And apparently JonBenet had made a comment that he, Bill McReynolds, was coming to their house to see JonBenet. I think everybody thought that was a little weird. His DNA didn't match, and he's out of the picture.
And then this is someone who actually gets brought up quite a bit. This is Michael Helgoff, and this was high on Lou Smith's list.
Michael Helgoff was an interesting character.
Lou Smith calls me cold, and I said to him, I've been praying for somebody to call and want to listen. Mike said he wanted to kill himself to get it over with, and that's one thing. And then he said that him and a partner were going to make $50,000 or $60,000 at Christmas. He wanted to crack a human skull.
Michael Helgoff evidently committed suicide the day after the Boulder District Attorney threatened that, hey, we're going to find you.
The list of suspects narrows. Soon there will be no one on the list but you.
So he committed suicide after authorities said they were narrowing their list.
Right.
He had a stun gun, and he had high-tech boots.
Correct. Stun gun, a bit odd for people to have. High-tech boots, fairly common thing for people to have. But the real clincher would be DNA didn't match, and he has no connection to the Ramsey family.
So he was ruled out.
And he was ruled out.
And then Brad, who could forget John Mark Carr?
Of course.
He made quite the headline.
I love JonBenet. Died accidentally. No.
Everyone probably around the world knows John Mark Carr.
Her death was an accident.
So you were in the basement?
Yes.
Problem is, he wasn't in Boulder, Colorado when she died, and his DNA didn't match.
And that was it. He was ruled out. What does it say about the state of this case and the possibility of ever solving it?
Well, that's a big question.
We went through the people of interest, the suspects, and came up with our top 20.
Take a look at it and run it through their program.
What our team has been doing is focusing on collecting DNA and testing DNA.
Do you want to get in touch with them? Who wants to?
I think we should make the effort.
Do you want to just start like maybe in September?
And since Lou has passed away, the team has been able to clear a number of people from that list. However, the work is pretty slow because of the time and expense involved in locating somebody on that sheet and obtaining their DNA and then testing it.
We have asked suspects for their DNA, and in other cases we've, I guess, done it the old-fashioned way with surveillance and trickery.
We've gotten together and followed people and gotten a discarded cup or some such thing.
So the DNA is evolving constantly, so we're in better position today than we've ever been to solve the JonBenet Ramsey case.
We are just trying to eliminate people from that list, and we just figure if we keep at it, hopefully we'll finally whittle it down to one person remaining on that list.
Lou Smith's family believes that all but one person on that list is innocent.
Who murdered JonBenet Ramsey?
Will the case ever be prosecuted?
Is it still just as mysterious today as it was in 1996?
Absolutely.
I think it's even more mysterious now to some degree because people have moved away from John and Patsy Ramsey as possible suspects. And so then you're sort of faced with this question of who the heck was in that house? How'd they get in? Why'd they target her? And to some degree, that makes it even more fascinating.
There was a person seen going across the lawn of the Ramsey house the night of the murder. Was there a killer trying to get into the house?
In September, we met with the Boulder DA's office and PD.
And what we presented was a confidential list of our top 20 people of interest and the list of the 8 people of interest that our team had eliminated through DNA analysis.
We just don't feel at this point that they are actively investigating this case.
The Boulder Police Department says the Ramsey case is an active, ongoing investigation, but they have never publicly commented on the handling of the case.
This team isn't going to give up. There's a third generation.
My daughters and others will continue on with this case when we end up being too old to do it. But we're not going to stop investigating. We're just not going to do it.
This case boils down to the intruder or Ramsey. And if the Ramseys didn't do it, then it's an intruder. And if it's an intruder, the intruder is still out there.
The case took its toll on the whole Ramsey family emotionally and financially over the years. John Ramsey would lose his job and spend millions on private investigators, lawyers, and security.
There are still people today, John, 22 years later, who believe you or Patsy or Burke had something to do with the murder of JonBenet.
I know that. And how could they have believed otherwise? Because that's what they were told. You know, even if we have a conviction, confession, and this person's in prison, there's going to be 5–10% of the population that still thinks we're guilty.
My dad certainly suffered a tremendous amount, but I think he's focused on life today and enjoying life with his family and grandkids, and he's remarried. Patsy died from cancer in 2006. She's buried in Marietta, Georgia, next to JonBenet.
In my mind, she's still my 6-year-old little girl. That's how I remember her.
Every once in a while, I'll see a little child from behind, a little blonde-headed ponytail girl, about 6 years old, and that catches me for a second because it looks like JonBenet.
The family has not lost the will to fight and the will to find the killer. We work on this daily. There's a group of dedicated volunteers that work on this daily. I want the trauma to stop for the family. And if we can find the killer, then the next generation doesn't have to live with that trauma and the unknown and the speculation. The only way to do that is to find out who did it. I think it's really important for people to understand that this case can be solved. There's a narrative out there that this is an unsolved homicide, and we just have to accept that as fact. And that is not the truth. If we leverage the evidence, we follow the facts, we will find this killer.
I used to give people my trust, and it was theirs to lose. Everybody carries a burden. And they struggle with loss or heartbreak, but everybody has to have hope. Just recognize that there could be evil around you.
Tonight, the relationship some people say sounds like a real-life Silence of the Lambs.
Missing women, a terrifying suspect, and the detective who risks her life to solve the case. An all-new 2020 starts right now.